But it also, that's where, whenever I talked earlier about being volatile as a child, I think because I didn't want to express it to my parents and it kept happening, it was like I had this rage inside of me. And, but that was the first time. But then whenever I was at college, I mean, quite literally, I had been drinking one night and I went to bed, and 2 hours after I went to bed, I wake up from a dream where I could see my parents standing at a funeral, a graveside service for a funeral. And I knew that it was the man from the hospital that my father shared a room with. My father had had a pulmonary embolism whenever I was 14 years old. So he had a blood clot in his leg that went through his heart and into his lung. And they thought he was going to die when I was 14. And he shared a room with this guy. And when I'm at college, 17 years old, I know, I can't see the guy's face. I just know that it's him in the casket. And I can see my parents standing at the graveside, and it's pouring down rain. And I looked out the window, and it was sunshine, 10 a.m., right? And I had been drinking all night till morning. And when the sun came up is when I went to sleep, and 10 a.m. I'm waking up from this dream. And 2 days later, my mother called me, and she said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you that," I forget his name, but this guy passed away. And I said, "Oh, I know." And it just jumped out at me. I said, "I know." And she goes, "What do you mean you know?" I said, "Was the funeral on Wednesday?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Was it raining when you were at the graveside?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Yeah, I saw it in a dream." It was like God was still showing up in the midst of me just destroying everything I had been brought up to know was right and wrong. And I would have dreams about situations that years later I would have the conversation with people and I would know what they were going to say next because I had already seen the situation. And this is not stuff that you tell people because some people just think you're insane. I don't know how else to say it, but you feel crazy whenever you're sitting having a conversation with somebody and a sentence comes out of your mouth and it triggers a memory. And I'm not talking deja vu. I'm talking it triggers a memory of an actual dream where you saw a conversation play out. And then the next, 3 times of volley, you already know what they're going to say and what you're going to say. And the exact words are spoken in the exact setting. And I had things like that happen. One was with a boss of mine, and we were in a building. In the dream, it was a building that I'd never been in before, never seen the inside of this room. And we're working in this building years later. And as soon as he asked a question, that's when the dream came back to me of standing in that room with him. And I had the dream before I ever started working for him. So I didn't even know his face or the room. So it's like you just dismiss dreams because the person you see isn't even in your life. So, but it was stuff like that I would have. So it was like God showing me he was real and me just dismissing it. And they were always some type of warning. That building, I encountered serious demonic activity, like incredible. So I had to, we restored and maintained all types of flooring and carpets. So there was a huge building right on the river in Pittsburgh. I had that situation the first night we were there, and it was all of us. And I had to go back several times to finish cleaning that whole building. And there's nobody in the building. I'm there. I mean, I'm the one with the keys and the codes and get in. There's nobody in the building. And when I went to the lower level to clean the carpets, it's kind of an open workspace with lots of desks and everything. So I'm just cleaning all the carpet that's exposed. And my machine was sitting about halfway down through this building, so it was almost 80 feet away from me. And I kept seeing some things more than one. But it was like a shadowy person in the room. But every time I would see it out of the corner of my eye and look toward it, I couldn't see it whenever I was staring at it. And I was like, you're just letting an empty building play tricks on your mind. And but this thing, quite literally, there's 10-foot ceilings in the place. It looked like it was 9 feet tall. And it had happened, I don't know, 6 or 7 times after I entered the building. Every time I'm trying to work, I keep seeing these things move around the room, and then one stopped next to the machine and just stopped, and I could see it. And I kind of threw out my arms because I honestly couldn't believe that I was actually seeing something. And I looked and I said, "Hey, get away from my machine." And when I said get away from my machine, that thing disappeared, and I felt hands clamp down on my head, like clamp down on my head. It freaked me out, right? So I packed up everything and got it upstairs. And after the moment that I spoke that, I could feel these hands squeezing my head. And every time I would walk out the door with equipment to go out to my van, as soon as I walked out the door, I couldn't feel them. But as soon as I walked back in the door, I could feel them back on my head. He said, yes. I said, well, you can have it. It was like, you can have it. It pays really good. And if you can handle it, I'd appreciate it. He was like, what do you mean? Because I didn't give away jobs. I didn't give up money. And he said, are you sure? And I said, oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm never going back in that building. And he made me tell him why. And he just laughed it off and thought that I was crazy. But, there is scripture that says, Jesus I know and Paul you know, but who are you, right? And essentially, I was calling myself a Christian, and I was living like everybody else in the world did. I have no spiritual power from the good side, right? And here's this thing that whenever I say, get away from my machine with authority, I didn't have any. And I found out real quick that I didn't have any authority because there was nothing I could do in that situation that would get these hands off of my head that I couldn't even see. So, that was just a moment where, I believe God knew exactly what was going to happen that day, and that later on it would actually key me in that there is spiritual powers. And if you are not empowered spiritually, then you're just going to be a victim of the one that wants to take you out. I'm going to tell you what, no joke. When I felt the hands on my head, it was like every hair on my body stood up. And the feeling was absurd, just really unnatural. It really was. And not that I'm trying to glorify the demonic, but that's what happened. And I was not spiritually in a place where I could defend myself. So I just knew that I'm never going back in that building.